Recording is going. And I'm going to share screen. We're going to go over basic halachot for a few minutes. Some of the basic halachot that every person that wants to blow shofar needs to know. And then I'm going to give you guys some pointers on what to look for in a shofar if you don't already have one, or maybe your shofar is not giving the best sound, what you should look for. And then we're going to talk about actually blowing, different types of blowing that, minhagim versus sounds, what they should sound like. So it should be fun, interactive. Okay, we're going to turn on the sound. You can turn on your shofar if you want me to see how you're sounding. I'll give you some pointers. Let me just share my screen. Let's start with the halachot. Always good to know what we're doing. Start. There we go. Can you see? Good. Screen's on?
Yep. Just
say that. Yalla, let's go. Okay. So first halacha, this is all from Yalkut Yosef, that the tokea has to be standing. Right? The person that's actually doing the tikiot needs to be standing. Okay. And only the tokea needs to be standing at the ones that are in the beginning section of the tekiot, which is right after the berachot that we're going to talk about in a minute. When you make the berachot, we know that there are going to be 30 sounds that are going to be blown from the shofar right after the berachot. We'll talk about why exactly that number and where they came from. But those tikiot are actually called the tikiot miyoshev, that the kahal can sit down for those. And it's better that they sit down, actually, because the ones that are standing up are the ones that we're going to talk about in the tefillah, in the amidah, and in the chazara of musaf. So these are going to be blown sitting, but the person actually blowing needs to be standing. Okay, and the berachot are right. Asher kedishanu estav sivanu lishmoa kol shofar, to hear the sound. The mitzvah of the day is to actually hear the sound, not to blow the shofar. All right, the mitzvah, obviously, the only way you can hear it is to blow it, but the mitzvah is actually for the person to hear the sounds of the shofar. So the berachah is the shmoa, and if it's the first day that you're blowing, which is most years, on the first day of Rosh HaShana, you'll say shechianu. This year, because the first day of Shabbat is not going to be blowing shofar on Shabbat, we're not allowed to. The rabbis made it asur for us to blow on shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and therefore we blow on the second day, which really the first time. So we're going to say shechianu on day 2. Okay, so those are the berachot that we need to make. There's important that the people need to understand that the beracha of shemi'ah, of hearing the shofar, is you're going to be yotzeh them. So the beracha that you're making is actually their beracha of hearing the shofar. So they need to make sure that they're not going to speak in between the time that the berachah is made from the time that they start to hear the sound. So you have to make sure that the person blowing is going to announce to the kahal. Make sure nobody's allowed to speak. You need to hear the tikiot. Okay? So it's called a shom'im lafsik b'dibur. The person obviously making the berachah can't speak, obviously, but even the kahal, because he's making the berachah for them. And if someone spoke, they're going to have to make another berachah again. So make sure no one speaks, please. And a person who is going to make the berachah on the tikiot. Okay, and then for some reason can't get the sounds out. Okay, and he made the beracha. All right, and he already was tokeh. Let's say, obviously, hopefully, he got out some kind of sounds. Right, and you need to hand off the shofar to somebody. There's no more berachot after that. So the one beracha is yotzeh everybody. It's okay for someone to complete the berachot, to complete the tikiot. It doesn't have to be done by one person. It can actually be done by multiple people. It doesn't really matter how many. It could be an infinite number of people blowing the shofar, as long as you're going to get the proper sounds out. But there's only one beracha. It's the beracha at the beginning, and that's it. Okay. If there's a minhag, and it's prevalent in our community as well, that you keep the shofar covered while you're making the berachot. You should actually have it in your hand, because you should have it ready to go, but covered. Not the kahal shouldn't see the shofar. It has to do. According to the Yalkut Yosef, it's the zecher, the zerizut of Abraham Avinu when he was hiding Yitzchak, has to do with the Akedah, which we're not going to get into right now. But minhag, if our minhag is accepted, that we should keep the shofar covered. Okay? The size of the shofar, so it should be at least 3 tefachim. Okay. There are small shofarot, which I'll show you in a minute. I actually have one that's right, maybe on the borderline of size proper. But most shofar, you're not going to have an issue with the size. But we are mahmir, that if it's a little too small, it's proper not to use that shofar. Better not to use it. Okay.
In inches, Joey. 3.
Yeah. So a tefach is going to be. You got to have to figure it's about. I want to say 8 inches. little bit less, maybe 6 inches, maybe less actually. It's probably 4. The tefach is your 4 fingers across of your hand, measured not by the knuckles, like right before your knuckles. So the 4 fingers of your hand. So we're talking about, something like 5 inches, 4.5 inches. So you're talking about a foot. The shofar should be at least a foot long. The point is that when you're holding the shofar in your hand, I'm going to show you the small one. I'm not going to see. Let me put my screen on myself. I can't see if you could see me. Hold on a minute. I'm screen sharing. Hold on a second. You see my shofar? See this one?
No.
You don't see it?
Your screen.
You're not seeing my screen? You see? Oh, you see my screen, right? Hold on.
Yeah,
I got to stop the screen share for a second. Hold on a minute. Stop screen share. I'm going to pause for a minute. Okay. So, see this shofar?
Yeah.
It's a little small, right? So you can see that when you're holding it in your hand, you can see both sides of the shofar. That's the most important part. When you're measuring the tefachim, I'll actually do it this way for you so you can see. So we're talking about 4 tefachim, right? 4 finger breaths, which is 1 tefach. So the shofar needs to be 3 tefachim, 1, right? And then start here, 2. This one is a dot, right? It's just big enough, right? Because the point is that when you hold the shofar, it should be seen 1 tefach from each side of the shofar. So they want it to be 3 tefachim. And that's the most shofars, right? Not going to be an issue, right? Most normal shofars are not an issue at all, depending on what you're using, but not going to be much of a problem, okay? But just keep in mind, if you have a small one like this one, which I happen to love, it makes a beautiful sound, but it's really just on the borderline of the size. Okay, so you got to be careful with what size your shofar is. Okay. Let's go back to the screen share. All right. So it's important that the person who's going to make the berachot is intending to be motzi the kahal, right? They have to know that the person blowing, I'm going to blow for you. You're appointing me as your shaliach to blow for you, and you're going to hear the shofar. I'm going to be yotzeh you, and you're going to be yotzeh through me. Both kavanah is required to fulfill the mitzvah. We know that. It's important that the person who's going to blow should make that announcement for the people to understand that you're going to be yotzeh for them. Even though it's implied, obviously, that you were the person blowing, it's good that they should, because again, this is a mitzvah deoraita of hearing the shofar. We want to make sure that the person is going to be fulfilling his mitzvah. You want to make that announcement, okay? And it's important also that if you're going to be the tokeah, again, if you're going to be in one of these smaller minyanim this year, maybe there's a rabbi, there's no rabbi, it's good to prepare a little dvar Torah, something about, to get the kahal, aroused before the shofar, to think about teshuvah. According to Yalkut Yosef, it's important that the person should do that. Look up, there's plenty of divrei Torahs. If you need one, email me. I'll be glad to share with you. But it's important to get the kahal in the right frame of mind for the tikiot of the shofar. Okay? Think about that next. So now I want to talk about the sounds, and then we're going to talk about we're going to start the practice. I'm going to give you pointers on how to get the best sound out of your shofar. So here we go. Mitzvat aseh min Torah l'shmo tiruat shofar b'yom Rosh HaShana. We know that, okay? And what is the mitzvah deoraita? Is how many tikiot does a person need to hear from the Torah? Kama tikiot chayav l'shmo b'Rosh HaShana tesha. The number is 9. That's the magic number, okay? And what you need to hear is a tiki'ah, a tiru'ah, and a tiki'ah. The Gemara learns out in Masechet Rosh Hashanah on Daf Lamed Daled that the tiki'ah sound and the tiru'ah sound are 2 separate sounds. You need to hear both on the Rosh Hashanah, the tiki'ah and the tiru'ah. And the Gemara also learns out that every tiru'ah has to have a tiki'ah before it and a tiki'ah after it. And you need to hear 3 tiru'ot on Rosh Hashanah, so it's tiru'ah, but each one has a tiki'ah in front of it. So it's 3 times tiru'ah with tiki'ah before, tiki'ah after. That's the 9. That's the deoraita law. 9 sounds, okay? It comes out to 9. Now, the problem is that over the course of history, unfortunately, we sort of lost the masoret, the tradition of what the proper sound for the tiru'ah is. Okay? What's the sound of the tiru'ah? Is it like a sighing sound, like that, right? Because he's worried, right? Or shivarim, that's what we call shivarim, right? Like short sound. Or yelala, right? It's a wailing sound, right? The wailing sound, person crying, crying sound like that, right? Show that the women are crying, that's the sound. Or is it a combination? Is it the first sigh sound, and then the cry sound, which was the tashrat sound? So we come out with, we're not sure what to put in between the two tikiot sounds. We know tiki'ah is a straight sound. We know that at the end it's a straight sound. The problem is the middle section, which is supposed to be a tiru'ah. What's the proper sound? Is it shivarim, or is it tiru'ah, which we call tiru'ah, or is it both? First the shivarim sound, and then the wailing, and therefore to be yotzeh the safek, to get to the 9 sounds that we need, we have to produce all of them. So 3 times we're going to blow tashrat, right? In case it's both, the sound is both. Then we're going to blow 3 times tashat, right? Tiru'ah, shivarim, tiru'ah, and then 3 times tarat. All that is because of the safek. We don't know. So the 30 is really not what's required. Minat Torah, we need 9. The problem is we don't know which the 9 are, so we got to produce all 30, all the possible combinations to be yotzeh, the sounds of the shofar that we're obligated to hear on Rosh HaShana. Okay? 2, 3 more halachot that are important for the shofar, so the tokea to know, and then we're going to start to blow together. Okay? The first is that the shi'ur, the sound, the amount of time that the shofar is supposed to be blown for the tiru'ah, for the shivarim, for the tiru'ah, tiki'ah. Okay? So the tiru'ah is supposed to be 9 breaths long. Okay? Well, we'll see in a minute. But the first tiki'ah should be a 9-breath tiki'ah. And then the tiru'ah is supposed to be also equal to 9 breaths. And the tiru'ah at the end also equal to 9 breaths. So basically what we're saying is that the tiki'ah in the beginning and the end needs to be at least equal to the amount of time that you're blowing the sound in the middle. Okay? So if the tiru'ah is a 9-breath one, so the tiki'ah has to be at least 9 breaths, so 9 puffs, like poop, 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 poop. It's okay to go over. All right, you can go longer, but you can't have the tiki'ah at the beginning or the end be shorter than the middle. Okay, it's important that they should be at least equal to the middle section, which means that now if I'm going to blow the tashrat sound, the shivarim and the tiru'ah together, which is supposed to be now 18 breaths, because the shivarim is a 9, the tiru'ah is a 9, that means the tiki'ah in the beginning of the tashrat has to be longer. It has to be an 18-breath tiki'ah. Okay, so it's got to be a few seconds longer, and to make sure that the tiki'ah that you're going to blow for tashrat is going to be longer than the tiki'ah if you're going to blow tashat or tarat. Right? Those tiki'ah, where you're only going to blow 3 shvarim in the middle, or you're only going to blow the tiru'ah sound in the middle, the tiki'ah doesn't need to be as long. But when you're blowing tashrat, the tiki'ah needs to be longer. Okay, so be careful when you're blowing the shofar. For those tashrat, you should blow the tiki'ot a little bit longer to make sure that you're not going under the time. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, the one that all those, by the way, are all the chatichila so far. There's only one, the one mitzvah or halacha that would make the sounds pasul that you'd have to blow over, and that's the one we're going to do right now. The last one is you're not allowed to take a breath in between the shivarim sound or in between the tiru'ah sound. So if I'm blowing tiki'ah, I have a nice long sound, and then I blow shivarim, and I took a breath before I blew the second or the third sound of the shivarim, no good. You got to start again. And because the tiki'ah has to be before the shivarim, you have to start over from the tiki'ah. It's the complete section of tiki'ah, shivarim, tiki'ah has to be a complete section of kosher sounds. And if I made a mistake in the shivarim and I took a breath, or in the tiru'ah sound, I did I ran out of air and I had to take a breath, I have to go back to the tiki'ah again. Blow the tiki'ah, then the tiru'ah, then the tiki'ah again. So the middle section, you're not allowed to breathe. Now, what about when I'm blowing tashrat? Tiki'ah, shivarim, tiru'ah, tiki'ah. It's a mahloket. Am I allowed to take a breath in between the shivarim and the tiru'ah sound? Inside the shivarim itself, I can't breathe. Inside the tiru'ah itself, I can't breathe. Can I breathe in between the shivarim and the tiru'ah is a mahloket. Okay, and therefore, in Yakut Yosef, they posek that the best way to do it is actually to be yotzeh, both opinions. And how do you do that? So we're going to read Hayat on the bottom. Shloshet hashivarim tzarich la'asotam benishima achat. You have to take one breath. They have to be in one breath. Ve'en linshom bentayim. Ve'chen hu adin betru'ah. Ve'af b'di'avad im nasham bentayim lo yatsa. Okay? That sound is invalid. You got to go back and blow again. Aval shloshet hashivarim ve'hat tiru'ah she'll say the tashrat. Yesh omrim she'en tzarich la'asotam yachad b'neshima achat. Some say you don't need to blow it with one breath, that the shivarim teruah sound together. V'yesh holkim v'sovrim she'tzarich la'asotam b'neshima achat. Some say you need to blow it with one breath, and therefore Yereh Shamayim Yotzei Yedei Kulam. Okay, and then this is only a lechatchila case if you can't do it. But betikiot demiyoshev, which is the 30 that you're going to go low right after the berachot, ya'aseh otam benishima achat. Try to blow the shivarim and the tiruah with one breath only. Or betikiat de'omed, which is the ones you're going to do in the amidah and in the hazara, take a breath intentionally in between the shivarim and the tiruah. If he can't breathe, he has difficulty holding the breath, and he can't blow the shivarim and the tiruah with one breath, right? As long as the breath was in between the shivarim and the tiruah. Cannot breathe in the middle of the shivarim, cannot breathe in the middle of the tiruah. Okay, and obviously you can't breathe in the middle of a tikiyah, because that wouldn't be a tikiyah anymore, because the tikiyah, as by definition, is a long sound. Okay, so that's the halachot that the tokea needs to know. I want to talk about. I'm going to shut off the screen share. I'm going to start to show you a little bit about the shofarot. What you're looking for in a shofar. Okay, what you're looking for is something that is nice and narrow in the beginning part of the area. The mouthpiece, you don't want the mouthpiece to be too big. You want it. I don't know if you can see a little bit. You don't want it to be too wide over here, because the way we're going to blow, I'm going to show you in a minute, is that you need to have a very tight seal on your lips for the shofar. And obviously, the wider the hole, the harder it is to get a tight seal. So you're not going to get a good sound. You want something that has a smaller hole. You also don't want something that has a very thick opening over here. Look at this versus this. You see this? See how it's very thick over here? So the sound will be much louder from something that's thinner, because the vibrations will produce the sound. When you have something that's thick, it'll harder. This will give a very deep sound, and this will give a much higher pitch sound. So depending on what kind of sound you're looking for, you should look at the shofar. You want something that has a smaller hole, right? And you want something that, if you want a deep sound, you'll pick something thicker. If you want a high pitch sound, you'll pick something thinner, right? Look, this one is really thin, very high pitched, right? The small one, okay? About blowing, okay? So it's better to blow from the right side of your mouth, because you want to seal on your lips, right? So the sound of the shofar really is produced from the vibration of your lips. The brr, brr sound that your lips will make when you're blowing air, that's what produces. This is an amplifier. It amplifies the vibrations of your mouth. That's how it's created, okay? So what you want to do is get your lips, the top and bottom lip, inside the hole of the shofar, so that part of the upper lip and part of the lower lip are in the hole, in the middle piece. And then there's a seal on the outsides that the shofar is not going to allow air to escape from above. So you want to try to get it close to the corner of your mouth, because obviously over here your mouth is already sealed. It's easier for you. If you put it over here, right in the middle, then you have to worry about air on both sides. If they put it on one side, I only have to worry about air escaping from this area. Right? So it's always easier to blow shofar from the corner of your mouth. It doesn't have to be all the way in the corner, but near the corner. Right? And you try to get the top and upper. I'm going to try to get close to the camera so you can see that you want to get the upper and lower lip inside the hole. And then when you blow, the air will push through my lips, vibrate my lips inside the hole, and this is going to amplify the sound. That's what's going to happen. Right? So the tikiyah, we're going to blow a tikiyah. Okay, so that's a nice high pitch sound. I'll show you the low pitch. This one is much lower pitch. It's very thick, right? You hear the difference in the sound, right? So the tikiyah, now, if we're going to blow a tashrat, so we want a long tikiyah. So you're going to take a nice deep breath. So you'll notice that I blew a shivarim as 3 sounds, 2, 2, 2. There's a difference in minhag. The minhag in Halab is to blow 4 or 5 even sometimes. A little bit shorter Shivarim and blow an extra 1 or 2. The minhag in Mitzrayim, the minhag in Damascus is 3. Depends on, you have to know what kahal you're praying for. So if you're going to be blowing in a minhag of halabim, you should be blowing at least 4 Shivarim, right? 2, 2, 2, 2, an extra 1. If you're blowing for other people, you should know what the minhag is. They want 3. There's one other minhag that we need to know about. I blew the teruah sound as a 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 sound. Okay, and that's the minhag of Mitzrayim. That's the minhag in Damascus. It's not the minhag in Halab. The minhag in Halab is to blow a lu 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 sound, and the way that the sound is produced, it's different between the way you make a teruah is with your tongue. You need to close the hole, right, in and out to create that shorter sound using your tongue. So when you're going to blow a 2 2 2 sound, the tongue is going to come close to the hole of the shofar, to the front of your lips. To blow the lu 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 sound, the tongue has to go to the top of your mouth, not near the shofar. So you're going to put the tongue to the bridge of your mouth. I'm going to blow both right now. I'll blow a 2 2 2 sound, and then the lu 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 sound, you hear the difference. But the way that's produced is by moving your tongue. Either your tongue comes to the front of your lips, it will produce a 2 2 2 sound like this, here, or here, up. Okay, it'll make a lu 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 sound. Watch first. That's the 2 2 2 sound. I'm going to blow the lu 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 sound. You hear the difference? All right? So the lu 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 is a much softer. You don't hear the sharp pop 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 pop. You hear like like that. That is the minhag of Halab. So if you're blowing a halabi a minyan, you should blow the lu 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 sound with your tongue touching the top of your mouth. It's also a very good idea to have some kind of pipe cleaner or something, because as you start to blow more sounds, especially with the tiruah, the spit is going into your shofar. It's going to change the sound. So definitely good idea to have multiple shofaras on the table, more than one. Or if you only have one, make sure you have something to clean out the shofar, okay, to get some of that out, because you're going to get into trouble as you start to blow 30 kolot in a row. Towards the end, it's going to start to give you trouble making the proper sounds. So that's a great idea. Another great pointer that you should think about is print out the kolot and put them on the teva in front of you. And you should have a somech. There's going to be usually most of the time they'll have somech next to you, one Hazan staying next to you, and have him point to the sound that you're supposed to make, because you're going to get confused. It's hard to remember where you are in the middle, especially because you're concerned about bringing the right sound. So if you want to make sure that you're not going to skip, or you're not going to double the sound, you want to have the person right next to you and let him just put his finger on the paper. If you want, I can drop this into the chat with a link, and you could just download it and print it for yourself, but keep it on the teva. It's important. It's a great idea to just make sure that you're in the right place. Most sidurs have it, but this is just a bigger version. It's in front of you. You're not going to make a mistake that way. Have the somech point to the proper sounds for you. So when we're blowing the 30 sounds, which we're going to do in a second, I'm going to give you my shofar stuff. Right, that's the order is tashrat, tashat, tarat, each one 3 times. When we blow in the amidah, right, and in the hazara, we don't blow. We blow all 3 one time. So we blow tashrat, tashat, tarat. Right. So this is 30 kolot. Right. And then the amidah is another 30 kolot. Right. And then the hazara is another 30 kolot. That's already 90. There's one more tashrat, tashat, tarat in the kaddish. These are 10. Right. So that's 100, and then there's the tiruah gedolah, which is the Achilles heel of most toqim, the hardest of because everybody is walking at their stopwatch. They want to see how long you can blow the tiruah gedolah. It's like a competition, among the people who like to blow shofar. Oh, I blew for 37 seconds. I blew for 94 seconds. But you take a nice deep breath, and you just let the tiruah go, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be so long, but it's just a pure tiruah, and that makes the 101 sound. That's the 101 kolot that is our minhag for blowing on Rosh HaShana. So I want to just, again, maybe I'll get a little closer and show you the proper placement for the shofar. And also, if it's going to happen. Okay, it's especially if it's your first time. The sound is not going to be perfect. Okay, don't be afraid to play with the angle of the shofar on your lips, because if the sound is not so strong, it means there's air escaping. It means the seal against your lip is not proper, and it's okay to tilt it a little bit because you'll catch the seal on the next sound. So I'm going to move it around while I'm blowing. You'll see what I mean. Okay. See, depending on what the angle is, the sound, it means there's air escaping. So if you're not getting the right sound, tilt it a dot, and then you'll see that you'll catch it. And once you found the right spot, try not to move it after that. Okay, try to keep it in the spot that you're getting the right strong sound that you're looking for, and then blow. So I'm going to blow a 30 cycle tashrat. If anyone wants to have if you have your shofar and you want to put it on, show me. I'll help you. Fadda, okay. It's also harder to blow when you're sitting. So I'm sitting because if I stand up, you're not going to see me. But it's harder to blow because your trachea, right, your body, if you have it standing up straight, so you're getting all the air to file. When you're bent over or you're leaning or you're sitting, it's a little harder to get the sound out. So you'll get a much better sound when you're standing up. You'll notice when I switched, when I blew the tashrat, I blew the tu sound, and when I blew the tarat, I blew the lu sound. I wanted to show you the difference of what it's supposed to sound like. So again, make sure you know what the kahal's minhag is that you're praying for. So if you're praying for halabis, you better blow the lu sound, because some old guy in the young is going to stand up and he's going to give it to you. Okay, so you better make sure to expect what the sound should be. And again, so it's because if you understand that this is just an amplifier and it's the vibration of your lips, so the seal is the most important part. Wear it, and therefore the smaller holes are better if you can get one. If you get a smaller hole, again, you want a higher pitch, you want something narrow and thin at the prop. You want the thicker one, right? This one is such a different sound. When I blow the thick one, so the sounds are all kosher. Any sound you're going to get out of your shofar is kol shofar. It's going to be okay, but depends on what you like. People like to hear that sound. Sometimes you feel it piercing in your heart. You get that high pitched sound. You get something like this one, which is crazy. This little one, a little harder to blow because the mouthpiece is a little bigger than the other ones. But when you get it, it's so loud. It's crazy. So you see that it makes a much higher pitch. So the size of the shofar will make a difference. The thickness will make a difference. The hole. So try to keep it on the right side of your mouth. If you're a lefty, some people blow from the left. L'chatechila, it's better to blow on the right. The left is kosher, but always the right side. We know the hamim, all the stuff that has to do with Kabbalah. We want to try to be on the right-hand side. It's also better to choose a shofar that was from a ram, okay, because of Akedat Yitzhak. But all shofars from kosher animals, which is are kosher. By the way, you can only get a shofar from a kosher animal because non-kosher animals, even though they may have horns, will not produce a shofar. The shofar is actually keratin. It's like your fingernail. And the way that it grows on the animal's head, right? This is the ram's horn, right? And after they cut it, what they do is there's a bone inside. So they boil the shofar and it expands and they pull the bone out. And this is just the outside of the bone, and then they'll create a mouthpiece. So you want to try to get one that's from a ram. Sometimes you'll see these older shofarot, some of the ones that you see from Halab from like the prior generations are black. And those are goat horns. They're not ram horns. Not that they're not kosher. They're kosher. But if you can get a ram's horn, adif. If you can't, if you're blowing your grandpa's or your great-great-grandpa's shofar, that's better than anything you're going to go buy in the store today for a ram. That's because you have zechut avot with you. That's always what we want to have. So don't worry about it. If you're blowing one of those beautiful antique shofars from someone's prior generation, that's also going to be great. If anyone has any questions, Faddal, please ask. Otherwise, we've come to the end of our session. I'm going to post in the chat right now. I'd like to drop it for you guys the paper. So if you want to print it or download it just to keep it on the teva, it's a great idea for the tokea. There it is. It's in the chat. You could just download it, keep it on the table. That way you don't make any mistakes while you're blowing. Everybody, I wish you guys school shim rabot. If anyone has any questions, Fadal now. Otherwise, you could reach out to me at any time. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Quick question: do you ever drink water or anything?
So yeah, that was good. It's a good question. There's a downside and an upside. If your throat gets dry, it's okay. But the problem is when your lips are wet, you don't get a good seal. So if your lips are wet, you're gonna have an issue. So sometimes you need to, if you're gonna take a sip, which you could, you just make sure that your lips are really dry, because when you put the shofar back on your wet lips and then the water gets in the shofar, that's a recipe for disaster. It's gonna cause a lot of problems with the sound. So if you need to drink, just make sure your lips are really, really dry before you put the shofar back. Keep a little, napkin or something near you that you can dry it, and then try again. Okay.
Should we stay away from drinking? Or
yes, adif, better not to, because it's going to cause trouble. It's better.
And all that.
So you could blow you could blow a tashrat to take a drink, or then take a break if you need to. It doesn't have to be rapid fire. You're allowed to take a little space in between the sections of the tikiot. So I can blow a tashrat, and if I need a couple of seconds to breathe, you can do. As long as you're not talking in between, it's not a hefsek, right? So if you need to take a little sip over there for a minute and then clean your mouth for a minute, you can do it. It's better not to, only because I'm concerned that you might get water in the shofar. If you get water in the shofar, shalom aleichem. So at least you better at least, if you have another shofar also, you should have at least two with you, or a cleaner, something to clean the shofar with. Okay. Any other questions?
How do you clean the shofar in general? Let's say before the holiday, do you clean it? Do you put water?
So I've heard, some people use vinegar to clean the inside of the shofar. I never had to do it. I'm using it once a year, so it doesn't really have much of a problem. Even if you use it now and you leave it 10 minutes, it's dry already. Because even though something gets inside, it doesn't build up very much. It's not much.
I bought a couple of new shofars and they smell.
They smell, yeah. So the new ones are problems. Yeah. So they say that vinegar will clean out the smell. So if you have a new one, pour some vinegar in it and let it dry overnight. If you have something to stick in there to clean it afterwards, otherwise you're gonna have to make sure that it's dripping out when you put it to dry. Make sure that you have it stand not flat, because the water's just gonna get trapped inside. You have to put it on somewhere to get the water drip out, get rid of it, let it dry overnight, air dry. You could blow dry it with a blow dryer and try to get it, and to get it out and make sure it's nice and dry, because the inside being wet, obviously you can understand that the vibrations, the liquid is gonna muffle the sound. You don't want any liquid inside your shofar. Okay. So that.
If I'm going to blow, let's say that's by somebody's house that's not coming to a minyan this year.
No beracha. If you're blowing for a person that's obligated, if let's say not a lady, let's say ladies, you're not going to make a beracha. You're blowing the 30 sounds. The tashat 3 times, tashat 3 times, tarat 3 times. If you're blowing for a male that's obligated, so you make the beracha for him even. And it's adif if he can make the beracha. If he knows how, let him make the beracha and you blow the shofar for him. Better. Yeah, for shechianu for him, it's a mitzvah, 100%. It's for shechianu, 100%. Seder, any other questions? Yalla, all the best.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.